Oh, you crazy kids. You'll never get me Lucky Charms. Haha, oh, you gotta be quicker than that if you want my Lucky Charms. Oh, no, kids, that hurts. No. Oh, no. Oh, no. Hello, and welcome back to the Troglodyte channel. In today's video, leprechauns have returned to the lands between. What does that mean? Well, all beings from throughout the land have left their usual area in search of leprechauns to get their hands on the leprechaun gold and those sweet, sweet lucky charms. Even the bosses are out in search of leprechauns, hiring stand-ins to take their place while they're doing so. I, playing as the Leprechaun, will be forced to run away from this cabal of enemies at all times to keep my lucky charms away from them. In addition to this, I'll be 1/3 the size of a normal character, as we all know leprechauns are tiny. And since leprechauns are luck-based creatures, I have made this a luck-based run by randomizing all the items in the game. So I will be forced to scour the lands between for all the items necessary to beat the game, while also running away from a cabal of enemies, bosses, and NPCs. This is a bit of a complicated run, so for the full details on what exactly this means and how to set it up for yourself, those will be in the description down below. But with that, let's get into it, and find out if you can beat Elden Ring as a leprechaun. Getting started with the tutorial area, what would normally be the grafted scion was a slug and a slime. And after seeing how much HP the slime had, I decided to take the speedrunner's way out. I decided to do the tutorial cave to see what replaced the Soldier of Godric and get a feel for how the run's gonna go inside of caves. And there are a lot of enemies in this cave. And a good variety too. Enemies really did come from all over the lands between to look for leprechaun. Entering my first boss fight, I saw that the Soldier of Godric had become a double boss fight. And in fact, every boss fight in this run will be a double boss fight. So each phase of each boss will become 2 randomized enemies or bosses. After making quick work of my first boss, it was time to go outside and witness the absolute pandemonium that this run was going to be. The map is completely flooded with enemies, and any of them that could conceivably see me will start chasing me immediately. As you can see, I've just stepped outside, and I already have 10 of them chasing me at least. I'm gonna have to be constantly running this entire playthrough, but that's pretty lore accurate to leprechauns, to be honest. This is my goal, you can't have it. Oh no, not a ring. Oh! Yes! Oh! Yes! Oh! As you can hear, I was relieved to make it to any grace, because that meant progress. And my goal at this point was to make any distance progress towards Margit, Stormvale Castle, Liurnia, or Altus Plateau. You know, the areas you would have to go to beat the game. Oh! No! Oh, I might have this. Yes! Woo, woo. I might make it. Yes! Oh. The segment between the main gate and Stormhill was especially difficult, so I ended up getting distracted and doing some other things for a while. Bear's already on. Lou died. I was finally able to talk to Melina, and it turns out, hilariously enough, that the enemies can actually attack you during the cutscene with this mod on. My screen kinda bugged out here, but when I came back, I was just dead. They had started killing me while I was sitting with Melina. And there's some mandatory dialogue after that to allow you to go to the round table hold, and Fortisax, who is somewhere nearby, kept zapping me while I was talking to her. I did eventually find a grace where I could safely talk to her though. At this point, I needed to level up my HP and stamina to have any chance of making it up to Stormhill, so I went to South Limgrave to grind up for XP, while also looking for great runes. Even basic things such as picking up items becomes very difficult in this run. One of the biggest lessons I learned early on when playing through this is that you have to try many different paths through the map in order to try to make progress, because some areas are so concentrated with difficult enemies to get past that you have no shot. So I wandered around in South Limgrave for a while, picking up items and dying dozens of times. I was particularly on the lookout for gold items, because gold items have a chance to be a great rune, which I need to beat the game, and the only gold item I was able to find was the Star Scourge Greatsword you just saw. So after getting bored of meandering around, I decided to go back to Stormhill and try to make linear progress towards the Erd Tree. Again, this section, and boy oh boy, this area was brutal. I tried wrapping around every which way I could think of, and every direction I looked there was rune bears, birds, lightning balls, and anything that can catch you while running away, just waiting for me. This segment here is where the rune bears became the bane of my existence, because they're one of the enemies that is the absolute best at catching you while you're running away. When entering a new area, I would honest to God prefer to see Melania than a rune bear. Rune bears were the worst. The giant birds are extremely hard to get away from too, and this area had both of them. No, no, no. Yes! 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 Oh my God! Ah, I made it to the Grace. You can almost hear the hours of agony in my jubilation. After that, it was time for me to take on Margit the Fell Omen. Or rather, the spring hare and the putrid corpse that were standing in for him. Yeah, they were really easy. This grants me access to Stormvale Castle, which has a ton of items, which means a ton of chances to find a great rune. There was a bit of struggle in this section, but ultimately it was much easier than the Stormhill run that came before it. The boss was a worm face and the guy with the horn, as you can see. And the guy with the horn doesn't even attack. Shut up. After this, I did some cleanup in Limgrave, which had to be cut for time, otherwise this video would be like over an hour long. But if you see me with new items, that's why. Now that I had made it to Liurnia, were things different? Well, yes, but they were only different in the sense that all the enemies do more damage and it's quicker to kill me now. Just to give you an idea of what I was going through, here's a really sped up version of like my average run from a Grace in Liurnia. I would make it pretty far, but ultimately, it was for naught. So yeah, this area was very difficult. So difficult, in fact, that pretty soon I hit a wall. And that wall was the literal wall in front of the college that I did not have the key to. And the key was not in the usual spot on account of being randomized, so I got bored and decided to do other things. Haha, look, Goldmask is a girl now. Having hit a wall in Liurnia, I decided to look through Caelid, and just getting to Caelid was an issue. Does anyone know where these Giga Hands actually spawn in the base game? I've never seen them. And of course, Caelid was a problem. I could survive like 3 hits maximum out here. I did eventually get the Grace before Redmane Castle, but then I realized that the festival to fight Radahn doesn't start until you get to Altus Plateau, so we'll put a pin in this for now. I was able to find upgrades for the Albinauric, so I will be using them from here on out. And now, there really wasn't much else left for me to do except for scour the lands looking for great runes. And that meant dying many, many times while looking for these great runes. Like, I'm editing this right now, and the number of deaths I have cut out is like almost beyond belief. Oh, and my short stature finally became relevant in this fight against one of these Estelle clones. I couldn't reliably hit him, so I ended up dying here. I hope he's not holding a great rune. Eventually, my scouring led me far enough north to where I could make a run at the ruin-strewn precipice and get to the Altus Plateau. And yeah, this area was pretty easy. I got lucky again with the bosses. That Leprechaun luck is really coming in clutch in this run. And just like that, I had made it to the Altus Plateau, which means I can now do the Radahn fight. Hey, check this out. I'm like thigh height to Blythe. He's like 3 leprechauns tall. Anyway, getting into the fight, it was a land squirt and an Albinauric. So I got insanely lucky with the bosses yet again and made quick work of them. Wow, that was some amazing good luck. Rykard's great rune and the key to the academy in one boss. But it turns out Thop's key doesn't work on the gate for some reason. Oh well, at least I got a great rune. So at this point, I really had no choice but to scour the lands looking for a great rune. I needed one and had no idea where it was, so I started to do all these little dungeons throughout Limgrave to see if they would drop a great rune. Oh, for some reason the Albinaurics would just refuse to fight sometimes. Like right here, they're just looking up at something, I don't know what, but they were useless in some fights because of this. I don't know if this is a bug or what. Haha, fire giant, you can't get me. Woo! Oh, he can. Eventually, I made it to Albus the Albinauric, and he did have something useful for me. Well, after the leprechaun chasers killed us, of course. Returning to his corpse, I was able to pick up the Academy Glintstone key, which finally gave me access to the Academy of Rhea Lucaria. After so much struggle, I finally started to get lucky with this find. That's right, the rolled medallion. It is required to beat the game, and I found it. It was extremely lucky to find it so early. Now, on to the academy itself. It wasn't anything all that interesting. The objective was to scour the place for items and hope I would find a great rune. The randomly selected bosses weren't too hard, and again, the inside was generally easier than it is outside. After finishing the academy, I felt like I had not searched Stormvale Castle thoroughly enough, so I went back to clean up. With Radahn's Great Rune, I had my second Great Rune and every item necessary to beat the game. All I had to do now was run through the areas, defeat the bosses, and I would be victorious. Now, getting around Altus was excruciating. I died dozens of times, but there was an even greater enemy on the horizon that I'm going to have to skip to now to save time. The Draconic Imp, replacing the Draconic Tree Sentinel in this run. For this fight, you've got one Fanged Imp and one small land octopus. Easy peasy, right? Well, it would be if it weren't for the dozens and dozens of enemies that come from nearby to try to kill me while I'm killing them. After spawning at the Stake of America, I could usually get in a good number of hits on the land octopus, but the enemies would close in on me pretty quickly, so I wasn't able to fully kill it in one go. This meant that I would have to finish off the land octopus and fight the imp while the hordes of enemies were on me. And I was able to kill the land octopus a few times, but the imp was much, much harder. I quickly racked up dozens of deaths, so it was time to get creative. I tried things with a great bow, but I had extremely limited great arrows, and after using a bunch and then dying, I gave up on that strategy. This first go at it was just pure suffering. Here's a small taste of my agony. After a few hours, I had had enough. I needed to find a ranged spell so I could sit on that ledge and pick off as many of the enemies as possible before going in to kill the imp. So it was back to scouring for me. After finding Glintstone Pebble and grinding out some runes to level up my intelligence, I returned to the Draconic Imp fight. I quickly finished off the land octopus and then went back to my ledge to start slowly picking off the rest of the enemies with magic. It is interesting how this ledge that you would never think twice about became so pivotal in this fight. The enemies can't chase you here, and that gives you a much needed reprieve from their unrelenting assault. Challenge runs like these really bring obscure parts of the game to the forefront like this, and that's what I really love about them. Before long, I had picked off a ton of the enemies and I was out of blue drank, so it was time to summon the Froggy Boys and have my go at the Draconic Imp. It wasn't starting off well. I was already out of blue drank and red drank. Finally, I was able to beat them, and after escaping death by the skin of my teeth twice in the final moments there, the Erdtree Avatar did get one last jab in on me and make me run back from the previous grace. Making my way into the capital, it was really the same story as Stormvale and Raya Lucaria, being that indoors is always much easier than outdoors, so we'll just skip to the bosses. Godfrey was a self-destructing lightning ball and a large naked albinaric. And Morgott was one of these blood witches and a ram. Both were easy peasy, and both provided me with some much needed flask upgrades. And after that, the giant lady returned and enlisted me on a mission to go to the mountaintop of the giants. And this run-up was surprisingly easy for a while. It was going quite smoothly. That is, until I made it to this grace here. Starting with this grace, this little section shown on screen in red was the most brutal section in the entire game. It was filled with the toughest, fastest, and best able to catch leprechaun enemies that you could find. Here's a little compilation to commemorate my pain. Okay, I was a little tipsy when I was playing this segment, and I was raging a little bit. Take a listen. Stupid! Ooh, yeah, sorry about that one. Drunk me was angry. Anyway, I eventually made it to the Grace, and was able to finally fight the Fire Giant, who, by the way, has a first phase comprised of 2 randomized enemies, and a second phase comprised of 2 randomized enemies. And I figured out in a couple of attempts that one of the second phases was a powerful rune bear. So there was a little bit of setting up that I had to figure out to get the 1v1 with the rune bear, you know, no distractions for the froggy boys. But after I did, it was just a matter of hitting him with Scarlet Rot with the good old Ant Spur Rapier, and then getting good after that. He finished off the froggy boys surprisingly quickly. And I do think it's funny that the rune bears, which were the bane of my existence all game, one of the few enemies that were able to catch up to me, ended up being one of the tougher boss fights with over 15,000 HP. Then the girl I've been helping out decides she would rather set herself on fire than date a short little Irishman like myself, and then I somehow end up in Detroit. Hey, want to see the fastest run I've ever done through Farum Azula to the Godskin Duo? Well, here it is, you're watching it. And the Godskin Duo ended up being a Rotten Stray and a Miranda Sprout, and you can guess how that went. And as far as running through this place, this section was slightly tough, but nothing even close to what I had experienced earlier in the game. Anyway, on to Malekith. Malekith had transformed into a crab and a bloodhound knight, and they did hit for big damage, but ultimately they weren't that difficult. So yeah, after killing Ram, the Black Blade, I made it so that gods die again, and then it was time for the final segment of the game. Starting with Gideon. Oh wow, Gideon, you don't look so good. I knew this run was taking a while, I didn't think it was taking that long. But yeah, Wandering Noble and the Spring Hair were no issue. The first Elden Lord fight was much more interesting, at least in the sense that it was a giant crayfish, which was much cooler as a final boss. Or second to final boss, rather. Got really lucky with the second phases though, and that brings us to our final fight. 2 bosses for Radagon and 2 for Elden Beast. Will I get lucky yet again? Radagon had been replaced with a Misbegotten and a Deer. And yeah, you can assume how that went. The Elden Beast had been replaced with a Clayman and a Guardian, one of those spear guys that guards the outside of each of the minor Erd trees. How's that for luck of the Irish? This playthrough ended up being like the opposite of a normal run in that the bosses were easy, the dungeons were medium, and just running around in the world was extremely difficult. And it's kind of anticlimactic, but a Leprechaun can beat Elden Ring with massive amounts of luck. Thank you all so much for watching. Please leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it. What did you think of this run? Let me know down in the comments below. Would you be interested to see the Leprechaun take on the DLC? Or what other type of mythical creature would you like to see in Elden Ring or Minecraft? Please let me know. Anyway, thanks again for watching. Mods are linked in the description below. And yeah, I'll see you in 2 weeks this time.